we read that when Naomi came back to Bethlehem, she was bitter because she lost everything. She also told the people not to call her by her name, but to call her Mara. The name Naomi means pleasant. No longer was she pleasant anymore. She was probably a bear to be around. Yeah? She's bitter now. That's what the word Mara means. She's bitter. And she also blames God for her troubles, her problems, doesn't she? At that point in time of Naomi's life, she was not in a condition where she could help anyone with the problems that they were going through. All she could think about was her own feelings, her own conditions in life. Her whole focus was on herself. She had no concern for anyone else. All she could think about were her problems and what she was going through. And I think most of us feel that way when we're going through problems, don't we? We don't really feel like helping anybody else. We don't care. The martyred German minister Dietrich Bonhoeffer called Jesus Christ the man for others. He said, being humble, thinking of others as better than yourself. Don't just think about your affairs, but be interested in others too, and in what they are doing. That's what Jesus did. Now, when the two widows came to Bethlehem, their plan was that Ruth would take care of Naomi, and both of them would eke out a living or an existence any way that they could. Again, when Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem, Naomi was not in a condition where she could take care of herself. I'm sure she felt so depressed that she didn't want to get out and try to find a living or make a living for herself. That's the way depression works, isn't it? Still the same today. You feel like giving up. You don't care if you live or die. You don't care if you find a job or an income or anything like that. But now we see that Naomi has a new zest for life and a plan to help Ruth in her life. Things have changed for Naomi. Naomi's attitude was completely changed from what it was before. No longer is she thinking of herself. She's excited about trying to find a home for Ruth, where she'll be well provided for. It's quite a turnaround for Naomi, isn't it? No longer is she thinking about herself. We see in these first few verses that Naomi is no longer just thinking about herself anymore. Naomi wanted Ruth to be happy and to live the rest of her life enjoying the rest of her life. And I think about this, isn't that what we as Christians are to do when we see somebody that is down and out? We need to lift them up, encourage them. That's what Christianity is all about. That's what fellowship is all about. That's what our job is as a Christian. But we also are trying to provide or point them to a place of rest. Now when we think of rest, we think of, like maybe kicking back in a recliner and just snoozing a little bit, right? But that's not what rest here is portrayed as. Now the first principle I think we can learn from this verse is that serving others brings joy to other people's lives. When we take our mind off of our problems and focus on other people, we can help them out. But it also brings joy to our life, doesn't it? And the reason why I say that, because I get a sense of joy out of helping somebody if I can. I know that that's probably the way Naomi feels now. The point is, when we get our focus off of our problems and focus on the needs of others, we can be a blessing to them as well as ourselves. In the King James Version of the Bible puts it this way. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee?" In the International Version of the Bible, we read that Naomi asked Ruth if she should try to find a home for her. Now, we think of a home as where we get rest at. not always the case. I realize that there's a lot of commotion at the home, but at times. But the word for home or rest means a place of tranquility and refers to the condition of security and rest. The word rest or home means quiet and speaks of someone that is settled. It was used to speak of someone who had a home and was settled in life. And again, it describes the lack of anxiety, restlessness, or an emptiness in a person's heart and life. And we would describe this rest as contentment of life, a deep satisfaction in life, peace of a heart and soul. Naomi felt responsible for Ruth's future husband and home. Again, Naomi is no longer depressed, but now she has a positive outlook on life. The rest that Naomi sought for Ruth was that of security in a family. For us, rest pictures something far more wonderful and precious. The rest is a portrait of that which the lost or sinners find when he or she enters into a relationship with Jesus Christ. We rest from our struggles, our toils, and our sins when we come to Jesus Christ. He's our perfect rest. Notice that it was Naomi's desire for Ruth that it may be well with you or her. We read that Naomi's desire for Ruth was that it may be well with her. We read in verse 9 that, or we read in Ruth chapter 1 and verse 9 that it was Naomi's desire for Orpah and Ruth that the Lord grant each of you find rest in a home of another husband. Remember, they lost both of their husbands. And even though Naomi is depressed, she still, in a sense, prays for them that they find rest or a home for them and to be well provided for with a husband. And at that stage in Naomi's life, she was away from God. Remember, she's been in Moab. She's been away from God. Now she's depressed. In her condition, she was actually misguiding Orpah and Ruth. She was telling them to go back to Moab. Remember the story if you've been with us. Orpah and Ruth wanted to go back to Bethlehem with Naomi. And Naomi's trying to tell them, no, don't go with me. I don't want my problems to rub off on you. I don't want you to be in the same condition as I am. Go back to where you belong. And as we know, as we read in the story, Orpah went back. And Ruth did not. She followed Naomi to Bethlehem. Naomi was giving them the wrong advice for life. She was trying to say to her daughter, go back and find rest there. And again, Moab was a place that was without God. It was a place that rejected God. It was a place that had believed in false idols or false worship and did not worship the true God. And this world in which we live in is not much better informed about where to find rest at, is it? Our society searches for peace and searches in vain for it, all along looking for it in the wrong places. Many people today are looking for rest and satisfaction in things like drugs and alcohol and extramarital affairs. Some people are looking for happiness in possessions of the world. Some thinking that maybe they would be happy if they had or won the lottery. But we know that doesn't always make people happy, does it? We find out we have a few more relatives that we didn't know we had before. I was looking for a handout.
He's your friend.
Millionaire Jay Gould said once dying, while he was dying, I suppose I'm the most miserable man on earth. Here he was a millionaire, but he's felt miserable. Andrew Carnegie said, Millionaires seldom smile and never laugh. I mean, we haven't experienced that, so I guess we have to take their word for it. Some people think that being popular will make them happy. And we know, we've seen movie stars, rock stars, and all that, how all the problems that they've had. That doesn't make them happy, but real joy, happiness, and peace is not found in possessions, pleasure, or popularity. I think of King Solomon. He said he tried everything. He had money and everything that he could buy, and he tried to enjoy it all. Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and verse 10 says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward of all my labor. He did it all. His final analysis of it all is summed up in verse 11 of chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes. He said, yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. It didn't mean a thing to him. It didn't make him happy. Now, what is interesting in Naomi's comment about may it be well with you, or where you will be well provided for, is that Naomi had prayed for this very thing to happen in Ruth's life. Again, we read about this in chapter 1 of verse 9. What is interesting about this is Naomi had prayed for this to happen in Orpah's life as well. She didn't follow up on it. In Ruth's life, she did. And this is an example of divine sovereignty and human responsibility being interwoven into bringing about the purpose of God. In other words, we shouldn't give up on praying for other people that it goes well with them, no matter what our condition is, right? She had prayed that it may go well with her and that the Lord would grant Orpah and Ruth that they would find rest. The point is, we should always be praying for people to find rest in their lives. Orpah turned back on the opportunity to come to know the true and living God. But Ruth followed Naomi to Bethlehem and received the blessings of that prayer. I believe that we can learn from this verse that is God hears our prayers. Even when we're down and depressed. And that He will answer our prayers in His own time period. Ruth didn't know if God was even listening to her when she had prayed this for Orpah and Ruth. She didn't know when or if it was going to come to pass either. But lo and behold, it did. But what's interesting is she prayed, then God used her to make the prayer come to pass. Now, I think about, remember the story whenever Jesus sent out His disciples into the towns. He sent them out 2 by 2. Well, before He sent them out, guess what? He tells them to pray for the harvest and pray to send workers into the harvest. And guess what? Right after that, He sends them. He said, you know, they're sitting there, I'm sure they're thinking, well, we'd pray for more people to come in to help us out. But Jesus said, no, you go. I think that's kind of what's happening here. Ruth prayed, or Naomi prayed, and then she was instrumental in helping the prayer come to pass. Now in verse 2 we read the place of rest. Naomi says in verse 2, is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you have been, a kinsman of ours? Notice in our text that Naomi acknowledged that rest is not found in a place but in a person.